Go.
Go.
Greetings, cardboard architects, and welcome to episode 18 of Command Tower, a video series about Magic the Gathering Commander. In this episode, Nick will wield his Lord Windgrace deck. Hannah will pilot her Magda Brazen Outlaw deck. I'll shuffle up my Mizzix of the Is Magnus deck. And Chris will bring it with Timna plus Kodama. Hello and welcome to another 4-player Commander gameplay. In this video, I'm going to start off with a Steam Vents tapped, and Chris is going to play a Serra Ascendant. One of the best ways he can start this game out. Nick will play a Bayou, pass the turn. Hannah will play a Mountain and tap it for Springleaf Drum. I'll add a Training Center to my mana base and cast a Thought Vessel. This deck has a lot of ways to draw a ton of cards, so effects like Thought Vessel and Reliquary Tower are just what we want. Chris is going to play a Bayou of his own, and go ahead and attack Hannah for 6 with Serra Ascendant for a 12-point life swing. Nick will play a Mountain and cast Farseek. And Chris will, in response, cast Nature's Claim on Springleaf Drum. And Nick will pick up a Badlands off of his Farseek. Hannah will play her second Mountain and bring in Magda. So Magda is able to sacrifice 5 treasures and search for an artifact or dragon card and bring it right into play. And you can also generate treasure tokens with Magda as well. I'll cast Jace Vryn's Prodigy. This is a nice way to filter through our deck in the early game, and then later we can start bringing back instants and sorceries from our graveyard. Chris will cast Timna the Weaver. He'll send the Serra Ascendant at me and draw a card off of Timna and lose a life. Nick will play more ramp in the form of a Rampant Growth. He's going to grab a Swamp, and with 2 mana up, he will pass the turn. Hannah will untap and play a Mountain. She will tap 2 of her mountains to cast a Rimrock Knight. She will attack Nick with her commander, and Nick will cast Terminate to deal with the commander. And thanks to our Thought Vessel, we have a turn 3 Mizzix for me. The earlier we can get Mizzix out, the better, because we want to start racking up experience counters and getting towards the end game. Chris will cast Heliod Suncrowned. So his devotion is low to where Heliod is not a creature yet. However, whenever he gains life, he can pay 2 and put a +1/+1 counter on target creature he controls. Actually, I think that mana ability does not require, that ability on Heliod does not require tapping any mana. So Chris will get through with Serra Ascendant and Timna. He'll use Heliod's ability to put a +1/+1 counter on Serra Ascendant, and then he will draw 2 cards and lose 2 life for Timna. And he plays a Forest, which he will tap to play Worldly Tutor. And he's going to grab Destiny Spinner. So my deck has a lot of counter spells in it, and Chris knows that. So he's going to get the Destiny Spinner as a preemptive stop to those counter spells. Nick will play a Harmonize and draw 3 cards. With 2 mana up, again he passes the turn. Hannah will play her 4th Mountain and bring out Magda for 4. And she contemplates who to attack. And she's going to come at Chris with the Rimrock Knight for 3. That'll connect. And with Magda's ability, whenever a dwarf becomes tapped, she will generate a treasure token. At the end of turn, I will use Jace Prodigy to draw a card and discard a card. I discard All Is Dust. And I'll pay 3 for Propaganda. So if my opponents want to attack me, they'll have to pay an extra 2 per attacker. And I'll also add a Harmonic Prodigy to my board. So whenever a Shaman or Wizard ability triggers, it's going to trigger an additional time. So essentially, if I cast an instant or sorcery right now, I'm going to get 2 experience counters instead of 1. Chris will untap. He's going to play a Polluted Delta. Search up a swamp. Then he'll play 2 and get the Destiny Spinner out there. So this really limits my ability to interact with Chris's board and spells. So I'm kind of going to have to go another way around this. I'm going to have to use board control rather than counter spells so much. So in comes Serra Ascendant and Timna the Weaver. I will take 6 from Serra Ascendant, 7 that is, now with the counter. And Chris will gain 7. And he's going to put another +1/+1 counter on Serra's Ascendant from Heliod. Nick untaps. Nick's going to play a Forest. He's going to tap 5 for Nissa Who Shakes the World. So whenever he taps a Forest for mana, he's going to get to add an additional green. Also, he can put 3 +1/+1 counters on a land and untap it, and it gains Vigilance. I believe he gets haste from that as well. Hannah will cast Pirate's Pillage. She discards a card and will get 2 treasure tokens and draw 2 cards. She's going to discard Cathartic Pyre. She attempts to attack me, but I remind her that I have Propaganda out, so she'll instead go for Nick. Nick will take the damage. And I'll activate Jace Prodigy at the end of Hannah's turn, discarding Reset. I'll play an island. So this is probably a chance where I have a choice whether to interact, mostly with Chris, with counterspells, although I can't really do that. Maybe I could save mana for removal spells, but instead I'm going to kind of go over the top of all that and cast Sakashima the Imposter and just try to generate a ton of experience counters and close out the game. Because presently nothing is stopping me from doing a Crackle with Power for a lot. Chris will cast Collector Roof, so that turns off my Thought Vessel, and more importantly, it turns off Hannah's treasures, which is going to be a problem for her. The deck relies heavily on the treasures for a combo part of the deck, which I will explain when we get there. But the ability to just use those for mana and even sacrifice 5 of them to go get an artifact or a creature. So Nick will cast Lord Windgrace. He's going to use the +1 ability, discard a land, and draw 2 cards. With Nissa, he'll animate another land, so he has a growing army of 3/3 lands. And in response, Chris is going to cast Eldamri's Call. And Hannah will play a Morph creature. And she will attack Chris for 3 with Rimrock Knight. I'm not sure the sequence there. Any creature he would have blocked with would have killed it, so I'm unsure why the Rimrock Knight died. Apologize for that. Hannah's going to cast a Proteus Machine. And she's going to sacrifice 5 treasures to go and look for an artifact or a dragon. And she's going to pick out Clock of Omens. So at this point, she has the combo on board. She can tap the clock and Proteus Machine in order to generate a treasure and untap Proteus Machine. She can then repeat that, tap Proteus Machine plus a treasure to get another treasure. So she's netting 1 treasure each loop. So she has infinite treasures. But of course the Collector Roof is out there, so it's really stopping her. Now I cast Capsize with Buyback on Nick's Lord Windgrace. So I pick up 4 experience counters from that. So unless I'm interacted with here, I'm going to have free range to do some really big instant sorcery stuff next turn. Meanwhile, Chris casts Yasharn Implacable Earth, putting further restrictions on how we play the game, and he's going to search up a plains and a forest. The Archon of Emeria will get in. Nick will untap and draw. Remember, his forests create an extra forest every time they're tapped, and he has some dual lands out in addition to his forests. So he will animate another land with Nissa, and he's going to tap those to cast a spell. He's going to cast Green Sun Zenith. And he will search for Cultivator Colossus. So he's going to put a land into play tapped from his hand, and if he does so, he can draw a card and repeat the process. So he's going to get, I believe, 2 extra lands that turn from the Cultivator Colossus. And Hannah will cast Shiny Impetus on Collector Roof. This is going to be her way of dealing with the threat so that she can get her combo off. And at the end of turn, I cast Firemind's Foresight. Chris reminds me that I can't tap the Thought Vessel for mana due to Collector Roof, but I do tap another land, and I'm going to search for Mystical Tutor, Cyclonic Rift, and Stroke of Genius. Remember that cards you search for with Firemind's Foresight, if they have X in the cost, X is going to be 0 when you're searching. Chris will cast Thalia, Guardian of Thraben. So our non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. That's normally a bit of a difficulty for me, but I have so many experience counters that it's not going to be too much of a problem this game. So the Goated Oof goes after Nick. Nick will block and kill it. And now Hannah has free range to do her combo. Nick will untap. He taps a Bayou. Okay, he's going to make the Bayou alive. Turning it into a 3/3 creature with Vigilance. And Nick will go for a Green Sun Zenith. He's pumping quite a lot of mana into that. He's going to get not a Cultivator Colossus, a Craterhoof Behemoth. And he's going to send a big attack in. Looks like he's attacking Hannah. And Hannah's going to drop to 14. At the end of Nick's turn, I'm going to grab Crackle with Power. Hannah will weigh her options and tap the clock and the Proteus Machine to create a treasure. She'll then tap the Proteus Machine and a treasure to generate another treasure and untap the Proteus Machine. And this is her loop. She can create infinite treasure tokens. So basically she can get whatever she wants out of her deck with Magda's sacrifice ability and have as much mana as she wants. And out comes Grinding Station. This is how Hannah's going to aim to kill us, and so at that moment I figure it's the right time to play an overloaded Cyclonic Rift. Although she could have kept comboing and got a bunch of stuff out of her deck. It would have been bounced to her hand, but still she could have had some ETB effects and cards in her hand better than in her deck. So I will activate Jace Vryn's Prodigy, and it transforms into Jace Telepath Unbound. So we're going to be looking at using that second ability to cast an instant or sorcery from our graveyard. But for now we're gonna tap out, except for 1 mana, and cast Crackle with Power. We're going to deal a bunch of damage to each opponent and one of Chris's land creatures. So that will eliminate Hannah from the game. And I'll attack for 4 with my 2 commanders. Chris will play Archon of Emeria again, so we can't play more than 1 spell each turn, and our non-basics enter the battlefield tapped. Fortunately for me, Crackle with Power is the only card that I want to cast in a turn. And out comes Craterhoof Behemoth. Nick's going to pump up his land army and send an attack in. I'm going to Pongify the Craterhoof Behemoth. And Chris will die to the 2 trees. And Nick will get a 3/3 green ape. So I'll cast Impulse. I'll cast Mystic Retrieval. And I'll return Crackle with Power to my hand and cast it. And that'll be the game. Thanks for watching.